Three men, a lonely lighthouse, and a question the sea still refuses to answer. In December of 1900, the keepers of the Flannan Isles light vanished without a trace. No bodies, no distress signal, only an empty tower, and a few unsettling clues. Welcome once again to the Nightshift Chronicles, where forgotten mysteries keep watch with us in the dark. Out there, nurses pace quiet hospital halls. Firemen wait for the alarm. Truckers roll through endless highways. And you, holding the night in your hands, join us here. If these stories keep you company, share where you're listening from and consider subscribing. Now then, the sea was calm. The light should have been burning, but on Eileen Moor, something was gone. The Flannan Isles rise from the North Atlantic like the teeth of something old. Island Moor, the big island, is the largest. Steep cliffs, no harbor worth the name, and winter seas that pound the stone until it shakes. On its crown stands a 75-foot lighthouse, completed in 1899. White tower, black lantern room, a bright engineered answer to treacherous water. The job here is simple in principle and endless in practice. Keep the light burning. Clean the lens, trim the wick, log the weather, monitor oil, repair what the wind tears loose. Repeat. At night, the beam sweeps the blackness like a metronome. Ships bend their courses by its rhythm. And inside the tower, time changes. Stairs, wind, glass, the soft tick of an oiled mechanism. That winter was harsh. Gales screamed across the Hebrides, and waves, taller than houses, shattered themselves into white smoke against the west face. Even on calm days, there's a sound to this island, a low, continuous thrum like distant machinery. Sailors say it's the ocean inside the rock. Keepers say it's the rock remembering the ocean. Three names anchor this story. James Ducat, Principal Keeper, 40s, steady hands, few wasted words. Thomas Marshall, 2nd, 28, strong, methodical, the worker who never asks to be thanked. Donald William MacArthur, the relief, quick to laugh, quicker to flare, known ashore for a temper and a loyalty to match. They were not strangers to the sea or to isolation. On a clear morning, they could see the outer Hebrides in a hazy roll to the east, civilization softened by distance. On a bad night, they could see nothing at all, not even themselves, just spray and wind and work. Life on station is a ritual. Wake to the gray, boil water, log the glass, inspect the oil. A man takes the watch while the other two maintain or rest. Meals are simple: bread, cheese, salted meat, a gift of fish if the landing allows, a miracle of fruit when the tender comes. There's a well-known code among keepers. One man always stays in the tower. Another rule: if you leave in distress, you carve the Maltese cross, a signal no one can miss. At the Flannans, in December 1900, neither rule appears to have been kept. The logbook is the heartbeat. Dates, winds, seas, neat lines in ink. December 12th, severe winds, Sea like a boiling pot. December 13th, damage noted at the West Landing. Rail twisted, gear thrown. December 14th, storm still raging. And then an entry that unsettles more than the weather. One man unusually quiet. Another wept. And the phrase, the men praying. Praying appears in logs, but not often. Not like this. December 15th. Storm ended. Sea calm. God is over all. After that, nothing. No further entries. No routine lines about wind or lamp. The ocean keeps moving. The pen does not. What complicates the picture? Weather stations ashore did not record a fierce storm on the 15th. Rough seas earlier in the week, yes, but not a day to erase men. December 26th, 1900. The tender Hesperus noses through winter water toward Aileen Moor. Captain James Harvey scans the cliffs for movement. A flag, smoke from a chimney, a keeper at the landing. There is nothing. The whistle blows once, twice. Only the surf answers. Joseph Moore, an experienced keeper, volunteers to go ashore. He climbs the wet steps, takes the path up the cliff, and finds the front gate closed, the door unlocked. Inside, silence. The clock in the kitchen is stopped. 2 oilskins are missing from their pegs. One remains, meaning someone walked into December weather without it. On the table, bread, cheese, a mug. A chair pushed back as if someone stood too quickly and never sat again. Beds, 2 made, 1 rumpled. The lamp room, clean, the edges trimmed, the lens polished. And the logbook, open to that final entry. Moore calls, searches the rooms, the yard, the sheds. Then, the landing team circle the island. At the West Landing, they find heavy damage. Rail bent, locker burst.
Is anyone there?
Ropes dragged from
Anything?
places the
Nothing.
sea should never reach. 70 feet up. No bodies. No footprints beyond the gate. No Maltese cross carved anywhere. Captain Harvey wires the mainland.
A dreadful accident has happened at Flannan's. 3 keepers have disappeared.
The tender, Hesperus, stayed as long as the December seas would allow. The island was combed, if such a word applies to cliffs that bite into the ocean. Every inlet, every narrow path, every ledge barely wide enough for a boot. Searchers called the keepers' names until their voices rasped. They lifted trapdoors, peered into storage vaults, rapped on the rock itself as if an echo might answer. But there was only wind, and the constant patient surf. Officially, the inquiry wasted no time. It began with the simplest explanation. The men had gone down to the West Landing to secure supplies or repair storm damage. Perhaps a rope needed tightening. Perhaps a crate had come loose. And then, a wave. Not the rolling swells of a calm sea, but one of those unpredictable bursts. A wall of water, its face vertical, its crest blown into vapor by the wind. A rogue wave. Big enough to lift a ton of rock from the cliff. Big enough to take 3 men without leaving a body. The sea gives nothing back quickly. But the details of the scene refuse to sit neatly in that box. Inside the lighthouse, the lamps had been cleaned and trimmed. That work is done at the end of a shift, not in the middle of a rush to secure gear. 2 oilskins missing, the heavy weatherproof coats that keepers wore against spray and wind. But the 3rd coat remained, hanging on its peg. Why would one man go into dangerous conditions without it? Either he had no time to take it, or he never intended to be out long enough to need it. The logbook was another stone in the shoe. The last entry, storm ended, sea calm, didn't match the idea of an urgent, weather-driven crisis. And why had they all gone together? The golden rule, one man stays in the tower, was not an idle tradition. It was born from centuries of hard lessons. And there was no Maltese cross. If danger forced them from their post, they were meant to carve that mark where any arriving crew would see it. The absence of the cross meant one of 2 things. Either they had no warning, or what pulled them away didn't seem like danger until it was too late. The inquiry kept its focus narrow, but mariners and islanders talked more freely. In those weeks, there were whispers from fishing crews who'd been in the area. One claimed they saw a light moving low along the water near Eileen Moor, against the wind, on the night of the 15th. Another swore to hearing a single, distant gunshot across the water, impossible to place, easy to dismiss. A retired keeper, years later, would tell his son about an unspoken tradition among lighthouse men. If you see a light that doesn't match the charts, you don't answer it. Not with a flag, not with your own lantern, not even with a glance out the window. You keep the beam turning, and you mind your own. The rogue wave theory remained the official conclusion, but beyond that, 4 other possibilities gained traction, none provable, all with their own hold. 1. Foul play from the sea. The Flannan Isles were isolated but not immune to human danger. Passing ships, legal or otherwise, sometimes put in near the landings. A violent confrontation could have forced the men away, but there were no signs of a struggle inside. No footprints beyond the gate. Still, the missing men's families noted that William MacArthur, the relief keeper, was known for a quick temper and for standing his ground if challenged. If an argument had begun, perhaps it ended at the cliff's edge. 2. Descent into the caves. The island's west side hides narrow fissures, vertical cuts in the rock where the sea has clawed tunnels. Some are just deep enough to swallow spray. Others go down into pitch darkness. A fall into one would be as final as falling into the open sea. But for 3 to go missing his way? Unlikely, unless one fell and the others went after him. 3. The wrong signal. This is the most human theory, a misunderstanding. Perhaps one man saw something that seemed urgent, a boat in trouble, a light on the sea, an object adrift, and rushed out. The second followed. The third, breaking the one in the tower rule, joined to help. By the time they realized it was a mistake, they were in the water. No time for a signal, no time for a coat. 4. Something else. The island has older stories than the lighthouse. Of the other light, pale, moving, just under the surface. Of sounds in the fog like voices calling you by name. The kind of stories that never make it into an inquiry file, but find their way into every fireside conversation within 20 miles. Rogue waves exist. Walls of water rising out of pattern, striking with lethal timing. The West Landing's destruction supports that possibility. But the timing, sea calm in the last entry, raises a stubborn doubt. Human error? A violation of the one inside rule? Maybe. But these were seasoned men. Even human error rarely erases 3 people without a sign. The Hebrides keep their own record, not on paper, but in talk. Fishermen speak of Eilean Moor as a place you do not linger. Old stones, old superstitions, old warnings about lights that are not lanterns and not stars. Some say the island hums under certain fogs. Some say tools move without hands. Some say a pale, low light can be seen from the cliff, not on the sea, but under it. Decades later, divers scan the west side, find boulders sealing caves as if rolled into place. A drone spots an angular scar on the cliff face. Next day, it's gone beneath the tide. Side-scan sonar logs an anomalous cylinder offshore. Permissions to recover it never arrive. The official file remains thin. The story grows elsewhere, in poems, songs, documentaries, and whispers. The light on Eilean Moor still turns, automated now, tireless. It carves the dark as it always has, a metronome for a sea that remembers. And somewhere between physics and folklore, the question remains, did the men leave their post, or were they drawn to another? The tender Hesperus stayed as long as the December seas would allow. The island was combed, if such a word applies to cliffs that bite into the ocean. Every inlet, every narrow path, every ledge barely wide enough for a boot. Searchers called the keepers' names until their voices rasped. They lifted trapdoors, peered into storage vaults, rapped on the rock itself as if an echo might answer. But there was only wind, and the constant, patient surf. Officially, the inquiry wasted no time. It began with the simplest explanation. The men had gone down to the West Landing to secure supplies or repair storm damage. Perhaps a rope needed tightening. Perhaps a crate had come loose. And then, a wave. Not the rolling swells of a calm sea, but one of those unpredictable bursts. A wall of water, its face vertical, its crest blown into vapor by the wind. The problems with the theory. But then, there are the details the wave doesn't explain. The missing oilskins, 2 gone, 1 left, suggest 2 men expected exposure to the elements, while 1 did not. If the wave hit while they were working, why were all 3 men in harm's way at once? One keeper's job was always to stay at the light, and these were experienced men. They knew the rules not as guidelines, but as a survival code. The damage to the West Landing could have been from a storm the week before. No one could date the bent rails exactly. And that log entry, storm ended, sea calm, implies that by the time they wrote it, the worst was already over. The psychology of isolation. Life at the Flannan Light was not for the faint of heart. Days without human contact, nights with the wind howling like a living thing. A keeper could grow hypersensitive to any irregular sound. The clank of a loose chain, the boom of waves in a cave, and convince himself it needed immediate attention. A sudden break from monotony, a mystery object in the water, an unfamiliar light offshore, could pull even the most disciplined man into action. The missing signal. Yet, if it was simple human error, why no Maltese cross? Why no chalk note on the door, no lantern left burning at the top? The only reasonable answer is that they didn't think they were leaving for long. Not long enough to justify the signal. Which means whatever pulled them away didn't feel like danger at the start. A keeper's superstition. Old lighthouse hands tell a story, not one the commissioners liked hearing. Never answer a call you can't see the source of. Some say it's because smugglers once used cries for help to lure keepers to the shore. Others say it's older than that. Something about the sea that doesn't always play by human rules. If one of the men heard such a call and ignored the superstition, the rest might have followed, straight into the teeth of whatever waited at the landing. In the end, the rogue wave and human error theories circle the same truth. 3 men went down to the west landing. None returned. The rest is the gap between what the logbooks record and what the sea keeps for itself. When the Board of Trade closed its official inquiry in early 1901, the commissioners considered the matter resolved, likely drowned while attending to their duties. But outside those polished Edinburgh offices, in harbors and pubs, and along the rocky coasts of Lewis and Harris, the story never sat so neatly. For the people who lived with the sea, the Flannan Isles disappearance became a different kind of tale. One that blended weather reports with whispers, ledger entries with folklore. One of the earliest rumors came from the crew of a fishing smack out of Stornoway. They swore that on the night of December 15th, 3 days before the relief vessel arrived, they saw a second light on Eileen Moor. Not the steady white beam of the Flannan lamp, but a faint, flickering orange, moving along the cliff's edge. Some said it was a lantern in a keeper's hand. Others weren't so sure. There was an old belief here. If you saw 2 lights on an island where there should be only one of them didn't belong to the living. Eileen Moor wasn't just a dot on the Admiralty charts. Long before the Lighthouse, shepherds brought their flocks over in summer and told of hearing voices in the wind that didn't match any known tongue. They spoke of strange lights moving under the water at night, and the sense, never proven, that the island didn't like permanent company. By the time the lighthouse was built, the locals avoided setting foot there unless duty demanded it. Some claimed the keepers joked about it in their letters home. Others thought the jokes were a way of keeping the fear at bay. Every lighthouse logbook in the service was a matter of record. Incoming ships, passing steamers, even fishing boats stopping for water, all were meant to be noted. But some islanders say that in the weeks before the men vanished, a small, dark-hulled vessel had been seen circling the Flannans at night. No name on her stern, no smoke from her funnel, and she never came close enough to be hailed. If she came ashore, it was without leaving a trace. One theory, not in any official file, is that the island itself lured them down to the West Landing. Not with anything supernatural, but with that primal, unshakable pull the sea has on certain men. A crash in the surf, a dark shape bobbing in the waves, the flash of something metallic just below the foam. 3 keepers might have looked at one another and thought, "We'll be quick." They might have thought wrong. Every unofficial theory has the same pulse. They keep the story breathing because they face a truth the official record won't touch. That in the dark spaces between record and rumor, there is still room for possibility. The Hesperus left Eileen Moor with 3 fewer souls than she had carried in her log. Her captain gave the order to weigh anchor, and the crew hauled hard against lines stiff with salt. The sea was calmer than it had been in days, but the island seemed to watch them go, its cliffs jagged against the winter sky. Sailors are not known for quiet decks, but that afternoon, As the light from the Flannan lamp faded behind them, even the bosun's voice seemed muted. Some stood at the rail, staring back at the west landing. Others kept their eyes forward, unwilling to glance over their shoulders. It wasn't just the missing men that weighed on them. It was the way the island had offered no clue worth trusting. Captain Harvey sent a wire from the first telegraph station they reached. Triple tragedy at Flannan's. Keepers missing. Search fruitless. Keepers feared drowned. It was the first message to cross from sea to land, but far from the last. Within hours, the wires hummed with speculation. The Board of Trade was notified. Lighthouse inspectors began drafting orders, and by nightfall the story had left the Outer Hebrides entirely, carried south toward Edinburgh and London. On December 29, 1900, the Northern Chronicle ran a short column under the headline, Mysterious Disappearance of 3 Lighthouse Keepers. At first, it read like a maritime accident report, the kind most readers would skim over with their morning tea. But by New Year's Day, the tone had shifted. Words like strange and unexplained began to creep into the paragraphs. The public appetite for mystery was already whetted, and the Flannan Isles had just provided a feast. Soon, the Lighthouse service began receiving letters from across Britain. Some offered sympathy for the families. Others offered explanations. A retired mariner from Cornwall claimed the men had been taken by a freak wave. A woman from Yorkshire swore she'd dreamt of 3 men walking into the sea on the very night they vanished. And more than one correspondent blamed something not of this world. Back in their coastal towns, the keepers' families received only what the officials could give them, which wasn't much. Widows received the wages owed. Children received their father's few possessions, but no one received an answer. And so the Flannan mystery passed from a private grief into a public legend. Some mysteries fade with time. The Flannan Isles, they only grew sharper. The official Board of Trade report was clear enough. 3 lighthouse keepers missing, presumed lost to the sea. But the world beyond the inspector's office was already reshaping the tale. In taverns from Stornoway to Stromness, sailors told versions where the men were swallowed by a wave taller than the tower itself. Others spoke of a black squall, a wind so sudden and violent it could rip a man from the rocks without a splash. By 1902, a new strain of the story had emerged. It wasn't about the sea's fury at all, but about something else on that island. Some whispered of a phantom ship, her masts ragged, appearing on stormy nights near the reef. Others claimed to have seen strange lights moving in the tower after the disappearance, long after the lamp was supposed to be dark. In 1912, poet Wilfred Wilson Gibson published Flannan Isle, a ballad that cemented the haunting tone. It told of arriving to find the door upon the latch, and no sign of life about the house. Gibson's verses left out the mundane facts, keeping only the eerie silences and unanswered questions. The public devoured it, and soon the poem was doing what the official record never could, turning the event into folklore. As the decades rolled on, the details changed, as they always do. Some versions gave the keepers a warning, a strange bird circling the tower. Others claimed one man had been acting strangely in the days before they vanished, speaking in riddles. And in the most elaborate tellings, the Flannan Isles became a thin place, where the living could step into another realm and simply never return. Every mystery eventually draws someone back to the scene. And for the Flannan Isles, the return has happened many times over the past century. In the 1950s, a team of lighthouse engineers visited the island on a calm summer day. They weren't chasing ghosts, they were checking the structure. Yet even they couldn't help pausing at the landing platform, picturing the last moments the keepers stood there. One inspector noted how the sea caves boomed under the cliff, an eerie, hollow roar that made the rocks themselves seem alive. By the late 20th century, the tools had changed. Surveyors brought high-resolution cameras. Geologists scanned the cliffs for signs of collapse, and marine crews began using sonar to map the sea floor, hoping to find wreckage or even evidence of a massive rogue wave. In 2015, an independent documentary crew flew drones over the landing site. From above, the stone steps looked impossibly narrow, carved into the very cliff face. The footage showed how a single misstep in the wrong weather could send a man into the churning sea far below. Not long after, a maritime historian attempted a full reconstruction of the December 1900 storm conditions. He fed in wind records, swell data, and barometric pressure charts from the mainland. The model produced a chilling picture, gale-force winds striking at an angle that would drench the landing platform with each swell. If the men had been out there, even for a moment, the ocean would have had the advantage. Still, none of these modern efforts could offer proof. The Flannan Isles remain what they've always been, a place where fact and folklore hold equal weight. And for those who work the night shift, it's the kind of story that stays with you long after you've turned out the lights. Picture it. December 14th, 1900. The sun has dipped below the Atlantic, leaving only a smear of copper light along the horizon. The wind is picking up, carrying the tang of salt and the sound of waves slamming into the cliffs far below. Inside the Flannan Isles Lighthouse, the thick glass panes rattle in their frames. The great lamp turns slowly, casting a sweeping beam across the black water. Shadows slide along the curved walls, stretching, bending, vanishing. Thomas Marshall sits at the logbook, scratching down the day's weather notes. Beside him, James Ducat mends a torn oilskin. Donald MacArthur, the youngest keeper, pauses by the window. He swears he's heard something under the howl of the wind, a low, rhythmic thud, like wood striking rock, then silence, then again. The others glance at him but say nothing. Out here, the ocean has 100 strange voices. By midnight, the wind is shrieking around the lantern room. Spray from waves nearly 100 feet below reaches the glass, leaving salt stains. The air smells of seaweed and something sharper, almost metallic. Somewhere outside, a loose length of chain bangs against the iron railing, again and again like a warning bell. In the logbook, the last line is written in a firmer hand. Storm ended, sea calm. God is over all. And after that, nothing. By dawn, the storm had not broken. Waves crashed against the base of the lighthouse, sending plumes of spray into the frigid air. The keepers were still inside. At least, that's what the mainland assumed. On the third day without a signal, a relief boat set out from Lewis. The sea was calmer now, but the cold bit through every layer of oilskin and wool. The crew approached the landing and saw the first sign something was wrong. The flagpole stood bare, the entrance gate was closed, and no one came to greet them. The men climbed the steep, slippery steps to the door. Inside, the air was still. A half-eaten meal lay on the table. One chair was knocked slightly askew, as if someone had risen in a hurry. But there were no signs of struggle. No broken glass, no overturned furniture. 2 sets of oilskins and boots were missing, but one set remained. The logbook entries ended abruptly 3 days earlier, matching the storm's arrival. And then, nothing. Authorities concluded the men were swept away by a rogue wave while tending the landing during the storm. But in the pubs of Lewis and beyond, other stories took hold. Whispers of strange lights in the sky, voices on the wind, and a shadow that moved against the beam of the lamp. For over a century, the disappearance of the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers has been a story of equal parts fact and folklore. The official explanation, that a rogue wave claimed the men, satisfies the record books, but for many, it never sat quite right. The most widely accepted theory is that a massive wave swept over the island during the storm. The missing oilskins suggested the men went outside in the downpour, perhaps to secure a loose supply crate or repair damage. But the Flannan Cliffs are treacherous even in calm weather, and one misstep on those slick rocks could have been fatal. Another possibility, whispered in nearby villages, is that tempers flared inside the isolated tower. 3 men, trapped together in a storm for days, could easily reach a breaking point. If violence broke out, it might explain the abrupt silence in the logbook, though no blood or damage was found to support this. Then there are the stories that skirt the edge of the supernatural. Some claim ghostly figures were seen wandering the cliffs on the night of the storm. Others swear by tales of strange lights dancing in the sky, lights unlike any ship's lantern or lightning strike. Whatever happened on that island in December 1900, the keepers were never found. Their disappearance remains one of the sea's most enduring mysteries, a tale that grows darker with each retelling as the waves pound against the lonely tower on Eilean Moor. And so, the sea keeps her secrets. The lighthouse still stands on Eilean Moor, its beam cutting through the dark, as if searching for the men who vanished more than a century ago. Maybe one day the truth will come ashore, or maybe it will remain locked beneath the waves forever. You've been listening to the Nightshift Chronicles, where history's mysteries are kept alive in the quiet hours. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, give this video a like, share it with a fellow night owl, and watch our other videos. You don't want to miss any of these stories that keep you awake.